Hello, everyone, and welcome to the real estate market analysis for Gilroy, California for April of 2023. And this is when we get together, take a look at what's happened in a previous month that's just gotten wrapped up, and see if we can't figure out where we might be going in the future. So we're going to start, as we usually do, with total active listings for April of 2023. Now, we did have a decrease in listings in Gilroy. What's interesting about that is that we've tended to see increases in inventory in most of the areas in past months. So this is kind of an interesting pivot for us. We had a total of 60 homes on the market in Gilroy in April of 2023. But the difference is not huge from the same time last year. We had 61 homes on the market last year. So all in all, I wouldn't call this a statistically significant change. This is really just a wash. We are on par with where we were last year in terms of total homes on the market. And remember, April of last year, we had just started to get hit by those higher interest rates. So we are still in that mindset in terms of buyers being faced with some challenges relating to interest rates, which makes, I think, complete sense in explaining this number. Now, and that's a 1.6% drop from the same time last year. If we look at months of inventory, we can see that we're currently at 2.4. And in terms of months of inventory, that is the second highest in our overall area in Southern Silicon Valley. Now, the county overall had 1.3 months of inventory. Morgan Hill had 2.8 and Gilroy had 2.4. So, as I've mentioned in past shows, a balanced, if you're thinking about it from what typically nationally people consider to be a balanced market, it's anywhere from 5 to 7 months. I typically go with a little bit of a smaller number in our local market because it just feels more correct. Like about a 4.5 to 5.5 month range is more of a balanced month of inventory for us. So still very much in a market where we could easily see a pivot to a more seller-focused market, just with more demand on the part of our buyers out there. All right, next, let's go ahead and take a look at new listings. These are homeowners who decided to become home sellers in the month of April. We had 55 in April of 2023. That's a 31% decrease from the same time last year. We had 80 homes added to the market last year. And remember, that was right after interest rates went up. So again, just like with inventory, you have to imagine what kind of an effect that kind of things has on the mindset of home sellers. And I think it's normal for us to see this drop at this point. I think many folks may have jumped into the market thinking we need to do it now. The market's getting more challenging for buyers. So I'll go ahead and put my home on the market now, versus now when these numbers have been around forever and we're starting to see really diminished numbers of buyers out there. I think just fewer folks are willing to jump in. If we're looking at the trends here, we can see between March and April, relatively flat last year. This year, a bit of an increase. So that's, relatively good news. But in terms of where we see things going in May, we saw an increase last year. My guess would be we see about the same or a little more next year if we're using last year as a guide in terms of trying to figure out what kind of a trend we might see. Let's see next. Let's go ahead and look at homes sold. Now, obviously, this is a big number to focus on. We have a 60% decrease from the same time last year. We sold 25 homes in April of 2023 in Gilroy, down from 63 homes in April of 2022. And if we look at trends, we see we peaked in April. April tends to be the peak month in terms of real estate numbers. And we start to see a decline after that. And we will likely see the same thing here. So the depressing news. Now, one thing to keep in mind is between March and April of this year, we saw a decline. Between March and April of last year, we saw an increase. But again, remember, March was the month when interest rates started to drop. So I think that is what really fed this number. And I think that explains why we see such a diversion from normal between March and April of this year. However, given the context of where we are right now, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that we see either about the same and perhaps even fewer homes actually getting sold. But we'll see how that goes. We're going to look at some pending numbers here in a minute, and that should give us some insights into what we might see in May. Next, let's go ahead and talk about those pending and contingent numbers. we can see that pending sales is actually down 28 from the same time last year, 28% from the same time last year. We had 38 homes that went pending in April of 2023 compared to 54 last year. And if we look at, again, the trends between March and April of last year, we saw a decrease between March and April. From April to May, we saw a little bit of a drop again. Again, that difference between March and April of this year is interesting because we had the increase in April, which would tend to indicate that we're going to see an increase in the number of homes sold next month. Now, if we focus down here on pending, we can see a jump in pending homes. This would indicate that we should see a jump in homes sold in May. Sold homes dropped between March and April, but pendings increased. So my expectation, as we relate it to that last slide where we were talking about the total number of homes sold, is that we will see an increase in the number of homes sold, because you can see between March and April, March we had lower pending, and then we got the number we got for April. So my guess is we'll see a bit of a jump in the total number of homes sold. It's not going to be a substantial number. It's going to be a handful, but it will be an increase, which is, I think, what a lot of folks are looking for. Next, average original list price. Don't know what's going on with me today. It's been a tough week, but speaking should be a little easier than this. This is the original list price, meaning that the very first time this home was put into the MLS for sale, this is the price that was entered. So when sellers were being pitched by a real estate person in their living room to list their home for sale, this is the number they decided on. Why do I use this number? Because I want to try to tease out of this data what the expectations were on the part of homeowners who wanted to become sellers. What did they think their home should sell for? Now, this is an increase of 2.9% from the same time last year. On average, in Gilroy, in April of 2023, the average home listed for $1,244,000. Last year, that number was $1,200,000. So expectations increased, right? Sellers expected to get more than they did a year ago. Because of the small sample size in Gilroy, it's really tough to spot trends here, particularly when you see some months like February where we just simply had some homes that were listed at the higher price point, and those can really offset these numbers. But overall, I think what we've seen in terms of just percent changes, Gilroy has been far more calibrated to the changes in our markets than other communities. They've seen much more reasonable entry prices into the market than some other areas. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at average sales price. Now, clearly, this is a very firm number. This isn't what someone thought. This is what a home actually sold for. And we saw a decline of 1.36%. So the same time last year, the average home was listing for $1,248,000. This year, it's sold for $1,231,000. And that's interesting because it's on par with listing prices. If we look at the average original list price, we can see that in the area here in Gilroy, we can see that while the original list price was higher, but the original list price was $1.244, and the average sales price was only about $10,000 less. So very well calibrated in terms of expectations of what homes are actually selling for. Pretty well calibrated between those two on average. So it's actually, I think, an encouraging number. Where will we go from here? Well, if we look at March to April of last year, we saw a little bit of a dip. Again, April is typically the peak month or right around the peak month. Last year, we peaked in March in Gilroy. And again, also keep in mind the small sample size makes this a little bit less something you want to make big plans on in terms of what to expect. But in looking at the general trend as we moved through the year last year, my guess would be that the average sales price is flat or even declines a little bit as we move into the middle of the year and then further into winter. All right, next, percent of list price. This represents how much a seller got for their home compared to the list price at the time it sold. So we were trying to peek into the expectations of sellers a few slides ago with original list price. This time around, we're trying to get an insight into what buyers are thinking and doing as it relates to the price they saw for the home at the time they made the offer. So when the buyer came in and made an offer on the house, this is where they were. And right now, they were 1.1% over asking price on average. And again, April is typically the peak. If we look at last year, we peaked at 108.2, and that was actually the same for both March and April of last year. But we should expect this number to drop as we head further into the year. So 101.1 or 1.1% over asking should be where we find ourselves as a peak in 2023. Last year, the number was 108.2, which is a 7.1% change between last year and this year. And again, if we're spotting that trend, it's not hard to spot. We should see steady declines from here right on through till wintertime, and then not really seeing a recovery until the beginning of 2024. Total days on market, this is how long it's taking sellers to get their homes sold. We can see that right now we are still at around a month. It's 29 days in April of 2023. In April of 2022, that number was at 9 days. So clearly a very big increase, 222%. And 30 days continues to be what I think is a magic number. It is a month, right? And as soon as you've gotten to a month on the market without getting your home sold, depends on what other activity may have happened. Maybe there were some offers made that just weren't at the level they needed to be. But if you haven't even had any offers after that 30-day period of time, sellers have to start asking, what do we do to get this home sold? This is a super important question to be asking right now, because if sellers are aware of the market, they realize that right now is the time to get it done. They're probably not going to get any more attention from buyers than they're getting right now. So you need to strike while the largest number of potential buyers are floating around out there. And right now is the time. Unless we see a dramatic change in interest rates, like a huge drop within the next month or two, that dynamic is going to remain the same. My guess is we're going to see interest rates that are about the same. We may see the next Fed move not see an increase in interest rates, but still we're up at around 7%. So it is where it is. We really don't have any other control about that. And assuming that stays right around that market, right around that mark, this is likely going to be a number that stays the same or grows. And again, if you look at last year, March, April, and again, looking at last year is a bad one because March is the month when interest rates went up. So you would expect from March to simply see this number increase. And that's exactly what we saw all the way into December, with a bit of a decrease in January. And then February, we had some homes that have been sitting on the market for a long time finally sell, which boosted that number up to 62. But that also, what's interesting about seeing that number 62 in February is it's an indicator of greater activity, right? Because we were not only in February selling what was being listed, but we were also selling off homes that had been on the market for a little while longer. So while that may be a bum out of a number for some people, it's actually an indicator of greater activity because older stock was being sold off. All right. Next, let's take a look at price reductions in Gilroy for 2023. Last month was interesting. We had a big drop, 18.8%. This month we had a 29.7% of all homes on the market in Gilroy had a price reduction. Again, I think this is a reflection of folks who haven't sold in March and April yet, some distance through April, and decided to really try to get into a more competitive stance on the listing for their home so they can attract the greatest amount of attention. It wouldn't surprise me if as we move forward with lower sales, but remember, pending numbers were pretty good for this month, which indicates a higher number of sales next month. We'll see what happens in May. But I wouldn't be surprised if for those homes that stay on the market, we see a bit of an uptick in the number of homes that have a price drop, simply because the sense of urgency grows as we get further through the year and heading into July, where folks really feel like if they need to get sold this year, they really need to take action to make that happen. All right. That about covers it for Gilroy for April of 2023. I sure hope we have left more knowledge on the table than we've taken up in your time. That is always the goal. Now, if you'd like to find out more, I've got some great tools at my website. Go to soldbyrobert.com. I have the new Homebot artificial intelligence tool for my homeowners. I'm not going to call it my home seller tool, because even if you're just a homeowner who just wants to get really amazing insights, now, of course, it's going to give you what every other tool gives you, which is an estimate of your home's value every month, but it's also going to cover so much more. Doing what if scenarios on if you rented your home as a vacation rental from time to time when you're not in it. Refinancing options. Does it make sense to refinance right now? Sort of a red light, green light tool to let you know, hey, given what we know about your loan, it might make sense to refinance right now. Now, granted, most of you aren't going to be in a position where that makes sense, but then it'll also give you options on how you could potentially tap into the equity of your home to do home improvements, make other investments. A lot of great tools. There's a great tool there for you to see exactly what the status of your loan is, how much equity have you built in the home, what would be the effect of making an extra $100 a month payment on your mortgage in terms of how much it would save you long term and how much it would shorten your mortgage. It's an amazing tool that I suggest everyone take advantage of, and I'm offering it free to all of my clients right now at my website. So head over to soldbyrobert.com to take advantage of that. I also have a very interesting search tool that's not currently available at the front end of my website. It's a very unconventional way of doing searching. It gives you some amazing tools. It's not just how many bedrooms and baths. It actually takes areas as a whole and gives you some amazing insights. So I'd be happy to share that with you as well. Reach out to me directly at soldbyrobert.com to get your hands on that particular tool. All right, folks. Thanks again for spending some of your valuable time with me. I look forward to seeing you next time.